Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. So long as you know that anime and or manga is Hunter x Hunter, that is. And today, we're going to be looking into a sector of characters that I have somewhat neglected to delve into in my coverage of the Succession War arc, as well as greater discussions about the Dark Continent. And to be fair, it's because they have been relegated mostly to the background for now. However, they are undeniably being set up to play a huge role in the future, so it's time to catch up with what's going down on the side of Ging and Pariston. Now these two figures are going into this saga with quite a history, coming right off the back of the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc. At the time, both Ging and Pariston were members of the Zodiac, holding the codenames of Boar and Rat respectively. Furthermore, in addition to this, Pariston was also the vice chairman of the Hunter Association, who had been gradually undermining the entire organization, leading to this climax of he and Ging engaging in mental combat in order to decide who the next chairman would be following the death of Isaac Netero. Now the interesting thing about Ging and Pariston is that they actually have a fair bit in common. They're both wildly intelligent, infinitely ambitious, and in this particular case, both heavily disliked by the Hunter Association at large. Ging because he's quite a loud and volatile fellow, whilst Pariston is a very double-faced manipulative type, and most of the support that he did end up garnering was due to people that he had directly planted. And despite their differing motivations, Pariston and Ging actually think on a very similar wavelength, capable of perceiving, generating, and implementing a wide array of out-of-the-box ideas that has no doubt assisted both of them in reaching the positions of prominence that they enjoy within the series today. Plus, the two of them also take great pleasure in treating rather serious matters like games, and in each other, Ging and Pariston see something of a kindred spirit, or at the very least, a fun individual guaranteed to make any situation that much more interesting. And you know, probably the biggest difference one could really point to between Pariston and Ging is that Pariston is an awfully patient man, more than willing to weather any situation, incrementally building towards his goal with a laser-like focus. Meanwhile, Ging enjoys the same sort of games, however he gets bored very easily, with his attention waning and scampering off elsewhere. And that became very apparent during the election, with Ging being eliminated fairly early on in proceedings, whilst Pariston was patiently able to position himself to win the election. And yes, it should also be said that Ging didn't just give up. In fact, his ultimate plan was to manipulate Leorio into taking the victory. Not that any of this mattered in any way in the end anyway, because Leorio relinquished his bid, and Pariston, despite winning the election by default, immediately resigned as chairman because, you know, he's Pariston and he does stuff like that. I guess just briefly, I should say that the motives of Pariston are very much shrouded in mystery. I mean, it could really be as simple as something along the lines of being bored and goading people into playing with him, which he definitely engages in, and in fact, he very much gets off on the idea of other people hating him. However, his motives could also be an order of magnitude more complex, as it would seem that the entire reason why Pariston became a hunter in the first place was in service of an expedition to the Dark Continent. And now this also brings up the motives of Ging, who is much clearer, having revealed that his current ambition is to travel to the Dark Continent. However, he has up until recently been unable to secure any of the required conditions to make this a reality. So already we can now see that Ging and Pariston were on a second collision course, and as such, after the election, they both resigned from their positions as Zodiacs within the association in order to pursue their oddly shared goal. However, ultimately, it would be another figure that would come to facilitate their involvement in current events, who is a man by the name of Beyond Netero. Now, if you're familiar with some of my other Hunter x Hunter videos like the Succession War recap or the one recounting everything we know about the Dark Continent, then you'll know what Beyond's general deal is. Basically, he aligned himself with the Kakian Empire and offered to act as their guide to settle on the Dark Continent because Beyond has, as of right now, an undisclosed ambition on the landmass. What I haven't gone into much detail about in those videos though, is that Beyond is not acting alone, and he has assembled his own separate expedition team that he plans on joining upon breaking out of his confinement by the Hunter Association, at some stage, whether that be aboard the Black Whale 1 or once they reach the Dark Continent itself. Regardless, in Beyond's absence, there was a number 2 within the expedition team, and that second in command just so happened to be one Pariston Hill. Now once again, his motives behind devoting a staggering amount of time and resources to cultivating Beyond's organization is unknown, but the ever-resourceful Ging was able to discover this group and casually strolled into their hideout, asking to become part of their expedition team. Now, of course, we do know that Jing's greatest desire at this point in time does seem to be to travel to the Dark Continent, but in this situation, his actions also came with a side dish of a somewhat more noble purpose, as he demonstrated concern for what Pariston may do to the Hunter Association. So in order to take Pariston's focus off them, Ging essentially offers himself, claiming that he will play with Pariston personally from now on until he begs him to stop. Although Ging said it much less sexually suggestive than I've probably made it sound, but this statement is effectively the beginning of a brand new chess match between the two, except on a significantly more serious scale, as Pariston asked if this meant that Ging was finally going to pay attention to him. At this point, Ging also reveals that he is well aware of the fact that Pariston managed to acquire 5,000 Chimera Ant cocoons following Isaac Netero's death in East Scorto. Cocoons that have more than likely hatched by now into 5,000 Chimera Ants, each equipped with the ability to use Nen, effectively putting Pariston in command of one of, if not the most fearsome army that the human realm has ever known. However, this is Pariston we're talking about, so it's very unlikely that he'd be using this power for a typical bad guy purpose, and in fact the ideas floated by Ging was that he may potentially use them to either infiltrate the Hunter Association by taking the exam, which given their natural abilities as well as Pariston's tutelage, they would have been guaranteed to pass en masse. Although Ging then goes on to admit that he has no idea exactly what Pariston would do with an association full of ants, but hey, the option is there. Another idea that was posed was that Pariston may choose to unleash his army upon the world in order to hurt the reputation of the Hunter Association, and in doing so, force a policy change in regards to travel to the Dark Continent. In any case, at this point, other members of the expedition team weren't taking so kindly to Jing's intrusion, but he quickly put them in their place, and went on to make assumptions of who the leader of the group was, based on the strength of the aura that he could sense in the room. And this led Pariston to announcing his position as second in command, as well as stating that Ging had underestimated him. But Ging of course knew better than this, making the claim that if Pariston was all about brute force, then he would have settled this by now and simply pummeled him. Instead, Ging admitted that Pariston was far more trouble than a purely powerful individual, and insisted that in order to defeat him, then he would have to break his spirit, a notion which Pariston seemed to take a degree of delight in hearing. And as step one in Operation Break the Spirit of Pariston Hill, Ging boldly claimed that despite the fact that he had only just rocked up out of nowhere, he was now the second in command of the group, right behind Beyond. Which is a really weird statement to say actually, right behind Beyond. Behind Beyond. Now obviously this caused an immediate uproar amongst the expedition team, with two of its members immediately preparing to engage in combat. However, Ging diffused the situation by making a very tempting offer. Essentially, Ging proposed that he would pay each member of the team twice what Beyond was offering them, and not only that, he would pay the amount up front with no questions asked or stipulating conditions, other than the fact that he be recognized as the second in charge of the team. To add to this, Ging even made it clear that the team were free to keep doing exactly what Pariston told them to, meaning that he was more or less giving up a small nation's GDP worth of money for the superficial right to be considered as of higher standing than Pariston. I mean, as always, that's not all there was to it, but one-upping Pariston is always a nice bonus. In reality though, one of the team's members immediately saw this as a plot by Ging to remove individuals who were less than profoundly motivated to visit the Dark Continent. And it seemed to actually work in one case, as a member promptly provided his bank account details, received the money, and then immediately and politely excused himself from the compound, never to be seen again. Or so we thought, because that particular individual did return later after using the money to pay off some debt of a hospital that his sister was being perpetually treated at. Now of course you would think that Pariston would be at least mildly annoyed by this development, but to the contrary, he openly embraced the idea of Ging becoming second in command, praising it as a great idea in his terrifyingly optimistic Pariston way. And in fact, as he was a member of the team, Ging even offered to double Pariston's fee as well. However, he also correctly deduced that Pariston was not being paid to undertake this mission, and stated that 2 times 0 would still equal 0, adding further intrigue to Pariston's personal motives behind this mission. Ging then went on to share his knowledge of the Dark Continent with the group, including the tales of past expeditions that each brought one of the 5 threats back to the human realm, the elusive and world-changing items that the Voyagers were seeking, and most tantalizingly, the only book ever written by an explorer of the continent named Journey to the New World, East Edition, authored by a man named Don Freaks. Now given that this team had been preparing for this mission for quite some time, it was a bit of a shock that none of them really knew any of this information beforehand, and that Beyond had not quite informed them of exactly how high risk the mission would be. The only exception to this was of course Pariston, whose access to knowledge undoubtedly would have led him to be privy to most of, if not everything, Ging revealed. Furthermore, shortly Pariston was going to feel something brand new, which was a feeling approaching hatred for another human being. And this is very relevant because throughout his entire life, Pariston, who focused on garnering the hatred of others, had never truly felt that way about someone else. Although it should be said that he had always felt compelled to hurt those who were dear to him. And so as Ging correctly deduced more and more about the organization, including the fact that everyone present was an expert in some sort of field necessary for survival on the continent, as well as their true numbers, Pariston began to feel annoyed. Very annoyed even. Pariston then silently hypothesized that perhaps the reason why he didn't like Ging was because they think so alike, and proposed that he may even grow to hate this man. But that wasn't a bad feeling at all for Pariston. On the contrary, it made him exceptionally excited, because knowing the way he treats the things he loves, Pariston was practically frothing at the mouth to have the opportunity to see exactly what he would do to someone that he truly hates. And at this point in the story, we have a 1-month time skip, and surprisingly afterwards, Ging and Pariston are still on superficially friendly terms, even after spending 4 weeks in close proximity to each other. That was about to change though, because Pariston had concocted a plan to attempt to discover what Jing's Nen abilities were in order to begin properly plotting against him. And this took the form of ordering some of Beyond's team to attempt to kill both of them, although Ging easily saw through this plan and defeated the henchman using a Hatsu that he had copied from Leorio, known as Remote Punch. However, Ging explained that his power to imitate the abilities of others was merely a natural talent of his, and that if Pariston wanted to see his real ability, then he would have to face off against him himself. And that is sadly where we have left these two in the series as it stands at the time of this recording. What I will say is that despite the fact that the Black Whale one has left, carrying seemingly all of those who are bound for the Dark Continent, there has been no confirmation on whether or not Ging or Pariston are aboard, or if they are headed to the continent via an alternate means. I would say that the latter is unlikely, just because of how absurdly difficult it is to source a vessel and the crew for such a trip, but then again this group of experts has been preparing this for quite some time, so it's not out of the question at all. But what we do know for sure is that things are only going to become more and more intense for Pariston and Ging as the Dark Continent story unfolds. A proper clash to settle this rivalry, whether it be physical or mental, is imminent. And I would be shocked if both of them left the Dark Continent unfazed, or even if both of them left at all. But that pretty much does it for this short recap of Ging and Pariston's involvement in the current storyline. If you enjoyed this video and the content this channel produces in general, then please do consider donating to the New World Review Patreon, because the support of all of you amazing people is what continues to make this channel possible. And if Patreon isn't quite your style, then please do leave this video a like, share, or subscribe, because it also helps support this channel an incredible amount. And if you'd like to join the fun at any time, then please do head over to my Discord server, where a wide array of shenaniganry takes place on a daily basis. And finally, please do comment with your thoughts on Ging, Pariston, and the Dark Continent. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.